Welcome to the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of Things I Think I Know. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always spectacular, fantastic, intellectually well-spoken Quincy Carrier. Follow him on Twitter at Quen_C. What's going on, Q?
Well, that was a very flattering intro, Brad. But,
well deserved.
Just enjoying the draft process finally coming to a close. Excited to see what, months of work on everybody's end, people at the OBR, my work, your work, amount to as far as what the Browns actually decide to do. I think I have a pretty good read on them this year, but we'll see what actually happens with them in the draft. I'm excited to get to the points where you can see where these guys are going to land and, seeing where some of your favorite prospects, how they're going to do. It's one of my favorite things about the preseason, right? Is being able to get a look at these guys and, getting a closer idea of what their fit is going to be in the NFL.
100%. Yeah. Let me ask you this as a process. Is your work done? You done? Film?
I think I'm done with quarterback, right? Quarterback and number two, right?
Yeah.
My opinions are pretty set at quarterback and number two. I don't think there's any more room for me to change on that. I have watched a ton of a lot of the quarterbacks here. I've watched a ton of everybody in consideration for two. I think there are, there's like a packet of answers there for both selections, right? Or both things there.
Did you listen to Andrew Berry's press conference?
Yes, I did. Broke the whole thing down on my channel. If you want to go check that out, OBR fans.
Yeah, go check that out for sure. I'll drop the link to Quincy's channel below. What any big takeaways from that? There wasn't a ton there, really. I didn't think. But any takeaways for you that maybe we missed?
I think with Andrew Berry, the one thing I've but have found to be a useful line of investigation with them, he's very consistent, right? He's a very every day is the same guy type thing, right? And with Andrew, it's been interesting which prospects he tends to get a little nerdy about, right? Because in his heart, he's a football nerd, right? I'm a football nerd. Like, there are players that when you hear me talk about it, you're like, oh, there's extra passion there. Like, this dude feels that pick a lot more than he's just saying, the nice stuff.
Yeah.
And when he talked about Travis Hunter, and every time he talks about Travis Hunter, you feel that intensity with Andrew Berry. It is clear. Everybody who's ever been in a media scrum with him comes back and hey, that guy likes Travis, right? Yeah. Everybody who watches the press conference and that's a 28-minute press conference, I think the first 7 to 8 minutes, good 25% chunk of it is just talking about Travis and addressing every concern you would have about Travis Hunter, to the point to where it sounds like these are arguments he has made on a regular basis, right? Like when he pulled out he had more receiving yards this year than all of these other guys combined. That's not a stat that you just have laying around for no reason, right?
Yeah, at the ready. Yeah.
I think the Travis Hunter thing, you watch that press conference, if it's a smoke screen, it's a hell of a smoke screen. And look, people can act. I've done a lot of acting in my past before, right? But nobody's that good of an actor. You can't fake the passion there, right? Especially not like a GM that went to Harvard for business. He's not going to be able to act at that level. It's like Timothy Chalamet stuff there.
Yeah.
So I think it's obvious there with Travis. Every time he talks about Travis, it pops up. I'm like, damn, he loves that dude. Now, it was the opposite way. Well, it wasn't the opposite way. When you talk to Jalen Milroe, it was clear that Jalen felt that way about Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
Like they go back and watch his press conference at the combine, and it's like, oh, Tommy Reese comes up, there's passion, right? His meeting with the Browns, there's passion. They asked him in that same press conference about a meeting he had with the Detroit Lions. And look, when he was talking about when he was talking about Terrion Arnold, his best friend from college, oh yeah, you can tell he loves Terrion, right? That's his boy. We're like, how do you think about playing with Terrion? We know you met with the Detroit Lions. We'll see what God has in plan for me, right? Like it was just a change of energy. It was like, I don't think he want to go there. I think he want to come to Cleveland. And then you hear Andrew Berry talk in the press conference, and they bring up Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe, and he can't contain himself. It's like, oh yeah, the Jalen Hurts of it all. He's the most talented. The like all this stuff. It was very detailed. It was very thorough with Jalen Milroe, and then he gets to Jackson Dart. And it's more of a general breakdown. Yeah. You know, good decision maker, scheme versatile. Like this is stuff that we've been in the podcast game a long time. And sometimes, you know, you get hit with a question you ain't got an answer to, right? But you gotta give somebody something. And I'm like, that is the I gotta give somebody something answer, right?
Yeah,
like that I've
a lot
heard
of
from people
buzzwords
before, right? It's like, okay. You know, you're not really feeling that dude, right? Or at least that's my read on it. So if you ask my read for that press conference, I'm like, okay, the smoke, it's either one hell of a smoke screen, or there's something real there. They like Travis Hunter.
They do.
They like Jalen Milroe.
They do. I thought the same thing about Milroe when he was talking about him, because he did get excited about talking about Milroe and his, you know, don't tell Lamar that he's faster than him, all that
he
stuff,
invoked
right?
Lamar Jackson, and I could tell in his face, he's like, oh, what? He tried to like walk it back. But it's like, oh, that's how I know he's excited. Same thing happened with Travis as a wide receiver at the combine, right? Where he was like gushing about how he sees him as a wide receiver. Like, oh, you got caught being nerdy. And I appreciate that, right? Because I'm like, okay, he cares about what he's doing. He's invested in it. But he got caught being nerdy. Right. And I'm like, it kind of exposed in my mind what he wants to do, because he's not really a smokescreen. As much as people think he's a smokescreen guy, he's not smokescreen. Right. What you see is what you get with Andrew. The question is just what you see. You just don't see much.
You don't see anything. Yeah. Very little, but very insightful there. I agree. I thought the same thing about Hunter at the one you're talking about, I think, which was at the combine, maybe. Right. And then Milroe today or yesterday. Very interesting.
Even in the press conference the other day, he keeps going back to it, and I'm like, this just tells you what he feels about him. Shohei Ohtani, like the undisputed best player in baseball. He's like Shohei. He could be this revolutionary player that changes the sport entirely. It's like, oh yeah. I think that guy likes Travis, right?
Yeah,
and
he's pretty high on him. Yeah,
and also understands the value with Travis, because I think we get caught up in the conversation with Travis, and we have these conversations about like percentages in games of what position he's going to play. But I think when you listen to Andrew, and I think why he brings up the Shohei thing is like, hey, eventually you hope to get to a point where it's like, hey, if you need a guy to if you need him to just play corner one week, you can throw him at corner. Right. If you need offense a ton one week and you need him to focus on offense, be a big play guy, you have a game plan centered around him, throwing the ball a bunch of times. He's going to primarily be an offensive player that week. Right. If you need him to be both, like as the normal, then you can have him be both as the normal, but keep the option to say, hey, look, this week we're playing Jamar Chase. You know, we like our matchup with Jerry Jeudy against the Bengals wide receivers. We're going to really focus on Jerry and David, get them the ball a lot. And we're going to have, Travis worry about sticking with T. Higgins, or like, hey, Denzel's down. We need somebody to hold down that corner position. This week, Travis is really going to have to step up at corner. And being able to not just use him as a half corner, half wide receiver, or, both a wide receiver in the corner, but say, hey, this week, we're going to have him here. And imagine the headache that is for an entire team trying to game plan, because first you got to figure out where you think the Browns are going to put him. And then you got a game plan for him being there.
That's super interesting, Q, because we have talked about at length about how teams need to have a plan, how they're going to use him, how they're going to introduce him to all this stuff. That approach is very interesting. I have been steadfast in the idea that you're taking him as a wide receiver first, and then working him in on the defensive side of the ball as you go. You're kind of saying eventually I do. It's a fluid situation. It's going to change, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying you do this year one, but like by the time you get to year 3, second contract time, right? Like you're like, hey, this is the extreme value of him is that he can be a rover on both sides of the ball and just like be a handyman and Mr. Fix It, right? Like you got a problem, like he can also be the glue guy where it's like, hey, we got a problem on defense this week. Travis, you need to play corner, right? Like Martin's giving it up. Like we need you to play corner, right? At halftime. And then the adjustment is Travis plays corner. I think that is the hope in the way to use him, right? There's going to be a base level of like, he's going to play like most of the time 70-30 offense, defense, right? But if you need to adjust those percentages, you can always adjust those percentages, and keeping that option available throughout his career, I think is going to be key to the versatility and the headache that Travis could be at the next level.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at its peak powers, I mean, that just you think about teams that can make adjustments at halftime. I mean, the amount or mid-game adjustments. Think about the adjustments the Browns could make are just wildly different, or any team with Travis Hunter, because of what he brings to the table. That's crazy to think about that, but super intriguing too. So that has been a hot topic. I love the idea of that as kind of a fixer if you need him to be down the line. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about teams. So I believe the line in Vegas is still at 3.5 quarterbacks first round, which is a good line.
Really?
I believe so.
3.5? They think 4 is going to go in the first round?
Well, I think they're trying to, let me check it for sure.
What's the number on the under on that? Like
3.5. You think the under?
What, 3.5 quarterbacks?
Yeah, because I
think there's going to be 2.
2.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, I think.
So let's talk about it, because you got some interesting spots in the first round. What are some pivot points, your teams that you're watching for, like after the Browns pick? Like the rest of the NFL is watching the Browns. That's the first pivot point in this first round, right? After that, like who are you looking at here that could take a quarterback?
So if we go through the draft order, right?
Yeah.
I think 1 and 2 seem pretty clear cut at this point. It seems like the Titans have fallen in love with Cam Ward. They have started the PR campaign already on him. I've already heard them compare him to Steve McNair. They're in. They're going to take Cam Ward. Okay, cool. The Browns at 2, they're taking Travis Hunter more than likely. I would be at this point surprised if they went any other direction other than Travis Hunter.
It's not going to be a quarterback. I know that. So, yeah.
So to me, I think the draft really does start at pick 3, because New York's the first team you look at. They could take a quarterback. I tend to think New York is thinking a lot more short term than most people are, right? Quarterback's a long term project. Yeah. This is not a team that's guaranteed to finish a long term project. This is a team that, in order to ensure a long term project, needs some short term success.
Yes.
So they seem like a team that's going to try to take a player that can help them right away, which means they're a wild card, right? They could go Genty here. They could go Abdul here. They could go with somebody that they just feel like Will Johnson. Like they can go anybody there at 3, I think, right? Now, the Saints are an interesting spot. They have invested a ton in Derek Carr, but I think the Saints, unfortunately for them, I don't think they know it yet, but they're in the same spot we were last offseason with Deshaun Watson, where you've invested enough money and time that you really don't want to undermine that right now, right?
Yeah.
Drafting a quarterback at 9 would completely undermine that entire project, and I don't think they're ready to do it. So I don't know if they go quarterback at 9. here, and let me pull up the draft order on my end, right? So we can kind of get a clearer picture here.
Yeah, I'm looking at. So what's your read on the car? Here's the question. What's your read on the Carr situation then? Like, is that him, you think, trying to force his way out? Or is that the team? Like, I've seen a lot of people come up and say that there's something fishy there with this whole shoulder thing.
Well, it's Derek Carr, right? And Derek Carr, this is not the first time he's had an injury situation like this. I think Occam's razor on this. Derek Carr has a reputation for trying to be a tough man, right? For hiding, not disclosing every injury that he's going through. Sure. And I think this was similar to the Deshaun Watson shoulder thing, where Derek Carr's camp went really hard to hide the severity of this injury from the team. And the team might be pissed off, right? But just like the Browns were pissed off last year about how that shoulder injury was not really fully disclosed to them or kind of downplayed by the Watson camp for so much of the 2023 season, they weren't ready to give up on him because of that, right? Like they were still ready to roll it out with him. I think they're in a similar position where they're annoyed with Derek Carr, but they still kind of got to see it through. Everybody else around the league is like, why would you continue to go with this? But they've sunk a lot in, and they don't have it. They're not like the Browns, where the Browns put a lot down the line and they were really smart with their contracts. They don't have an out. They got to see this shit through. Yeah. So, or else it's Spencer Rattler, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think they are kind of in a tough spot to where they can't undermine that. They have to make a move to make something happen. I think 11 is an interesting spot for Jalen Milroe, San Francisco. That's the first spot where I'm like, if there's a Jalen Milroe surprise in this draft, I think it could happen at 11 and 12. Dallas and San Francisco. Brock Purdy's in the last year of his deal. He's not close to having a contract done with San Francisco. No. So right now, he's on track to be an unrestricted free agent in 2026.
Yeah.
And all of the signs from San Francisco indicate they got cold feet about paying this dude. Right? We heard about it last year. We are hearing about it now. Remember, Brock Purdy has that weird elbow injury that they're really uncomfortable about. Right. Yeah. So it's not just how good do you think Brock Purdy is? It's like, how well do you think this guy who is really small is going to hold up physically? And then you look at Jalen Milroe, right? If we think he could be a fit in a Tommy Rees system, he could be a fit in a Kyle Shanahan system. I think the difference between him and the other athletic guys that they've tried to run there is that Jalen Milroe wants to be on time, wants to play in structure, wants to be coached, right? And then you have that athletic ability on top of that. I think there's a good chance that Kyle Shanahan says, hey, we know we're not going to have to play this guy year one. We still got Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And then we can give ourselves some leverage in a contract negotiation with Brock because we can say, hey, we can just go with Jalen. Right?
Interesting.
In a contract negotiation with him. And in best case scenario, Jalen Milroe balls out. Then you got another guy on a rookie contract for a long time.
Yeah, so, it creates some leverage too.
And they're the one team in that top 11 that has the leverage in the roster to say, we don't got to do this. Like, we don't have to add somebody that help us day one. If we just stay healthy, we're fine.
I agree. That's an interesting point. I didn't even consider the Niners there. Let me bounce back to two teams I want to ask you about. Mm-hmm. The Raiders at 6. There's a connection to Shador there a little bit. And then the Jets at 7. You think no go on quarterback there?
No go on the Raiders at 6. I think that Shador would be the one they would go with, and Shador's not somebody you sit on the bench behind Geno Smith, who just signed a 3-year contract at $37 million, right? So I don't think they're really thinking about Pete Carroll ain't thinking about the future. Pete Carroll, like 70-something years old. He's trying to win now. He's trying to use that pick to get better around Geno Smith. Now. Yeah. New York, are they first-year GM situation?
Are they? I believe so.
Yeah, I believe they're first-year GM situation. One thing about first-year GMs, they are more hesitant at quarterback than guys in their third, fourth year, right? So unless they fall in love with one of these guys, then I could see them saying, "Hey, let's get a position player. Let's get better right now, right?" Because you don't want your first pick to be a massive screw up that everybody's going to have to spend 3 years watching on the field, or run that risk. So I think they're going to be too scared to go quarterback. At 7 there.
It's a little too rich probably for those teams to take a swing there. It's too much of a commitment. I would agree. All right, so 11 is super interesting. You mentioned Dallas for Milroe, right?
Yeah, that's another team, right? There are two things I measure a team's quarterback relationship on. How often do you hear them in trade rumors? Whether the rumors are legitimate or not. Like, how often are people on the team talking about it, right? And two, what do they do at backup? The reason I'm like, man, I don't think the 49ers really love Brock Purdy. Every year they go out their way to sign a really good backup that they want to develop, right? Like every year. They got Mac Jones this year, who we know Kyle Shanahan felt strongly about him coming out. Sam Darnold the year before, Josh Dobbs last year, right? Like they keep trying to develop somebody back there. And even with Josh Dobbs, they ended up sitting him for somebody else they wanted to develop, right? Because they wanted to give that guy a chance. Like they're always trying to audition people at quarterback. It feels weird. The Cowboys are the same way. The last few years, they have been taking these shots at backup quarterback, right? They do Trey Lance, trade a fourth for him, and then they just did another swing with Joe Milton. Why? Right? Like, why are you doing that? Dak has the whole contract thing coming up. And look, this is not the year they're going to trade Dak Prescott. You wouldn't draft Jalen Milroe thinking that, okay, we're going to trade Dak and be good. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, we'll have Dak for a year. We could sit Jalen, and then we'll play Jalen. And similar to the 49ers, you feel like all of the stuff that happened last year was about Dak being injured and the team being injured. So you don't really think you need to add a ton of talent right now. So, you're kind of freed up if you're the Dallas Cowboys to go after Jalen Milroe. And it's kind of similar principles there, right? This is somebody who people think has the most physical talent in this draft class. Somebody who has high coachable intangibles, right? And he's the youngest quarterback in this class. I think some people have gotten caught up in like, oh, the internet doesn't rank him high, right? The internet sees him as top as 50, 60 on some of these boards. But coaches are going to look at that guy and say, look at everything you could turn this guy into. And they're going to say, hey, look, his tape might not scream top 13 pick, but maybe in 2-3 years, just like Jordan Love, you're going to look at that and be like, that was a good pick, right? Especially if you get the time to develop him. So those two teams, right? 11 and 12. That's the first part where I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little nervous if I want Milroe at the back end of the draft, where I'm like, let's make sure he slides through 11 and 12, because I'm not 100% sure he's going to slide through 11 and 12. Maybe also 11 might be another a surprise Jackson Dart spot. I'm not a big fan of Jackson Dart, but if you like what Jackson Dart can do, which is just make quick decisions based on like RPOs, like that's Kyle Shanahan might like that too.
Agreed. We've seen a lot of mocking of, we talked about the Saints, but I've seen him mocked at 9 a lot. What's the connection there, you think, with Dart?
I have no clue.
Okay. A weird one, right?
I think they're looking at that one and saying, well, Jackson Dart, who's the OC over there right now? Like, who they hire as the head coach?
Well, they're Kellen Moore is their head coach now. So
so Kellen Moore is heavy RPO.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what Dart is. Dart is truly an RPO quarterback. So maybe that's the connection they're seeing there. So maybe that's like, if you're a team that really loves Cam Ward, I could see you being in the sweepstakes for Jackson Dart, because both those guys are pretty good off RPOs. I don't think Cam's much better at RPOs than like Jackson, but like I think that's the big appeal with Cam Ward. If you feel like you have a deep RPO bag as a coordinator, then Cam Ward makes sense.
Okay. All right. So we're through 12. What's the next team that jumps out to you?
Oh, Pittsburgh, obviously, right? 21. I think that's the next pit stop. It's like, okay, Pittsburgh. They need a quarterback.
It feels like it's not going to be Shador, according to the reports this week. So it feels like they love Milroe.
Either Milroe or Dart, right, is what you're hearing. And that would make sense given what we know. Like, I never thought that Shador would be a big fit with Pittsburgh. He doesn't seem like a Mike Tomlin guy, but Milroe most certainly does. So the question with Pittsburgh is, can they really pass up on talent at 21 that they need right now, especially if you're going to go with an old quarterback? I guess the counter argument to that would be, hey, they traded for DK, so they can say in their heads, well, we got DK with the second pick, with our second round pick, so we can take a chance there in the first round because we got a known quantity with our second round pick. And maybe that's what they're setting up. Hey, they got 2 wide receivers there for a reason, and maybe that's because they're thinking about developing a quarterback. And they not just got 2 wide receivers, they extended DK on top of it, right? Which, kind of points towards more quarterback oriented. So, 21 is another one where I'm like, okay, they could probably go for a quarterback because in between 21 and 11, like what? The Dolphins aren't doing it. The Colts aren't doing it. The Falcons definitely aren't doing it. The Cardinals aren't doing it. The Bengals aren't doing it. The Seahawks aren't doing it. The Bucks aren't doing it. Yeah, so it's you'll be fine until you get to 21 there.
Yeah. I look at an interesting one that you don't hear a lot, and after that, I'll just throw out there. What about the Rams? That's an interesting spot, I think.
The Rams and the Lions, right? Those two, because Matt Stafford's getting older. Now, Les Snead don't like young people. It's clear he don't like young people. So he might take Tyler Shuck here, right? Like, he don't like these young dudes. He has not drafted like anybody under the age of 22 or under the age of 23 in a long time. So that's the only thing that makes me wonder if Les Snead might be one of these guys is like, hey, man, let me see what I can get with Tyler Shuck in the second or third round. But I look at Detroit and I'm like, I can see it with Detroit too, right? They did meet with Jalen Milroe. We talked about it. They have Terrion Arnold there, right, who could vouch for the work ethic that Jalen does. It doesn't seem like Jalen was excited about the prospect of going there, but I could see that being a big fit there with what Detroit has going, and another team that can say, hey, we can sit this guy for a year for sure, and then have him play when he's ready. The issue with Detroit, right, is that it's not as clear cut of a situation as I think is there at 11 and 12, where it's like, okay, they're definitely going to go 1 year if he goes 11 or 1 year if he goes at 12. With Los Angeles, it's like, well, they did extend Matt Stafford, so they're kind of committed to that. So maybe you want to wait till 2026 or 2027. I feel like if you're a team, you feel like you can push this to 2027, you do it. And Detroit's in that same spot where I'm like, they could go quarterback here, but they could also say, hey, like, we're probably going to have to approach this more in 2027 anyways, because we don't want a guy to waste his rookie contract sitting on the bench when Jared Goff's not ready to retire yet, right? Or not even close to being ready to retire yet. So I think that's going to be the big question there. And I think if you're the Browns and he does get past 26, that's when your window starts to open to make a deal to get back in the first round. If you really, really like, if they love Milroe, might as well secure him. It's not really about the 5th-year option as much as it's like, hey, I don't want to be here trying to get cute and being like, damn, I didn't get my guy because I wanted to wait to 33 because I didn't want to give up the extra late round pick. So, I think once you get to 26, and I think LA could also be a trade partner for you there. The Ravens aren't going to be a trade partner for you. But then I think maybe the Commanders be willing to deal with you. And then obviously the Eagles would be willing to move with you too if you just really did value the 5th-year option for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mocked that a couple times. Like, hey, if he's at 32, you're going to take him at 33. You just flip him, a 7th or whatever. Go up 1 pick. They drop.
You might not even have to net a pick out. It might just be a pick swap. You give them 33, 32, and then you go from like 192, and you take like their 213, and they get 192. Something like that.
Something real simple. You got a good relationship with them, his brother's over there, and you get that 5th-year option on him.
Yeah, it's more or less a deal to open the window to see if you can. And if you're Philly, right, you're going to want to keep an eye on this Myles Garrett thing, and that's another thing to think about. I don't think NFL teams are convinced that the Myles situation is completely over, and I wouldn't if I were them. So like they're gonna make deals that are like, hey, like let's work in good faith, because if Myles comes, I want to be the team you call, right? Like the Nico stuff, right? The team you feel comfortable calling in the middle of the night if you decide to do something rash. And have a good read on things. So like there's gonna be a lot of people making deals like in good faith with the Browns. So I think Philly would make a ton of sense there to try to make a deal in good faith with Cleveland.
33. So if Milroe's there, I think we all kind of think that might be the pick. And if he's around there. So the question becomes for me though, and the super intriguing thing is, I don't think there's any way that I think that's how you get the 4 quarterbacks in the first round. I think the line, like I said, was 3.5. I think they just have teams, somebody taking Dart, somebody that loves them that we don't know about. I don't know. I've said all along, I think he goes in the first round to somebody. We'll see. But I think, somebody in the back end of the first takes that 4th quarterback. I think that's how you get the over on that, or what Vegas is thinking. Maybe not. Maybe it's easy money and you go under on that. Go to your.
I think people tend to overestimate at times what the quarterback pickings is going to be. And I think last year made it so that people are going to be a lot eager. But I think for me, last year's evidence that they're not going to be that eager, because a lot of the justification that came out for why so many quarterbacks won the first round last year was because they were looking at this year's class and weren't too convinced about it. Well,
that's a good point.
If that's the math, then it's not going to happen 2 years in a row, right? Like the teams are going to probably be a lot more conservative about taking a quarterback here. I think Milroe could make sense there. I think if you like Dart, you feel like you could get Dart. Like Dart makes sense at like 35, right? Like, or in the second round. So I think Dart does make it to the second, and then like, I don't even know who the 4th quarter was. Shador, I think he should be a first round pick, but like, I don't think I'd be surprised if Dart, Milroe, Cam Ward, and Shador all went in the first. Like,
that would be.
I don't think there's that many slots of teams, right? Because I think some of these teams only make sense for certain quarterbacks. Because I don't think the 49ers are going to draft Shador, right? Like I don't think that's something that they're going to do. I think they would be more interested in somebody developmental, and that's why I'm like, when I look at who could the second quarterback be, there's way more opportunity for somebody developmental this year in the first than there is for somebody you're looking at as like, oh yeah, that's a finished product. Right, like
and absolutely.
I think that's the disconnect that Vegas has, right?
I think so, and I think you're right that they're probably looking more at like past trends of like, hey, somebody's going to reach on a quarterback, right? Somebody's going to get desperate and want a quarterback, but there's a lot of spots, to your point, that are more advantageous for the developmental guy than the guy that you need to start right away. With that said, I find it hard to believe that Shador falls as far as a lot of people having him fall. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I've said this for a while. I like Shador as a prospect, but
me too.
He fits the mold of the type of prospect that falls in the draft all the time, right? Like my big confidant was Teddy Bridgewater, and Teddy went from being the number 1 overall pick, to falling all the way to like 31, 32. In that year's draft. And like, keep it a buck with you, Teddy was a much better prospect than Shador was. And had less questions about his athleticism than Shador did. Because also had less questions about how he plays up the competition. Because Teddy blew up an Urban Meyer Florida team in a bowl game, right? Yeah. Back when everybody used to play in the bowl games, and also back when Louisville was in the Big East. Or the American, right? Not with the recruiting advantages that they've gained in the ACC. So that to me makes it seem like I can't be surprised if Shador falls to the second round. I think he is somebody I have a first round grade on or a top 40 grade on. But I can see where it could happen because there's that part of it, right? And Teddy fell to 31 for hand size, and that's it. Shador also has the it's a positive and it's a negative for him, right? It's a positive because a lot more people are aware of how well Shador Sanders played in college because of his father. But there is a burden of being a Sanders family guy, right?
No doubt.
Especially when you are the more vocal Sanders family guy, and you are willing to be a bit more audacious and say how you feel and kind of act more like Dion, right?
Yeah.
And Dion could do it because Dion was Dion, but my whole thing with Shador is Shador, one of them prospects where you got to do the stuff, right? You got to run at the combine. You got to do the 3-cone. You got to be buttoned up in them interviews. You got to do all
Clearly not.
Yeah. And you're not the type of prospect that can just get away with just chilling out through the draft process. And I think that was a miscalculation. We talked about it. I called him Bigfoot because it felt like every time you get a look at Shador Sanders, they're trying to distract you with something over here, right? Every single time, you get to the combine. Not the combine. You get to the All-Star game circuit, right? You expect him to be a Senior Bowl guy, but he does East-West Shrine. Why does he do East-West Shrine? Well, it's because Dion has more control over East-West Shrine, so he can kind of control how it looks. And it's already we're dealing with the funhouse mirror. But even more awkward than that, and I think we should really look back on this with more scrutiny than we did at the time, he didn't practice during the East-West Shrine game.
No, he didn't.
Because he was convinced he was a top 3 pick, right? That was the excuse that was given out why he didn't play. Well, now we know that was not the case.
Yeah.
Because he's not an obvious top 3 pick right now.
No.
It seems all the top 3 teams are nah. Not at that price, right? Not at those prices, Chief, right? That's basically what these 3 teams have said.
Exactly.
And with Shador, it's why did you not practice at the East-West Shrine game now, right? You got to be thinking about that. And then you get to the combine and it's he's not doing any drills. He's not running any combine. He's not going to throw. Why wouldn't you at least throw? You have the prettiest
Dion factor. Yeah.
Deep ball, the most accurate passer. You would have looked like a Greek god throwing against some of those guys they had at that combine. Because the whole talk was how inaccurate all the combine quarterbacks were. If Shador was there dropping dots, he would have looked amazing. His footwork drills would have been great. It would have been a great opportunity to showcase him. But he didn't do that. And you get to the pro day, and he finally does stuff. But it's hey, man, we're going to sneak in Travis Hunter last minute into these drills. So you're really thinking about Travis, right? And then even with the pre-draft meetings, why is it Shador and Travis?
I don't know.
It just always feels like they're changing stuff to make sure you don't get a direct look at Shador. And even for somebody like me who thought that Shador would be the number 1 quarterback prospect in this class after the college football season, you've obfuscated the image enough to make me wonder if there's something I ain't seeing. Are you trying to scam me? Because it's Brad, do you play video games?
Yeah, a little bit.
So when a video game's coming out and the trailer looks amazing?
Yeah.
But then it's 2 weeks before release and they haven't released gameplay footage. And you're why haven't we seen gameplay? And all of a sudden it's the day before the game releases and you don't get a gameplay trailer or anything like that. You just you're stuck with that original E3 trailer. And it's what the hell is going on with this game? Right? Yeah. That's how I feel about Shador Sanders. Where I'm the trailer looks great. Right? I can buy in on that. Right? But then you're damn, dog, you ain't going to give me no gameplay. And even when you give me gameplay, it's really quartered off. And it's you're not letting me see the direct feed from the PlayStation. It's off of axis. And it's what are you trying to hide from me about this dude?
Something being hidden, something.
And it might be nothing. It just might be a horrible strategy, from the Sanders camp, which I tend to think it is. But
I think
that
it is
strategy is going to be something that I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if you fell out the first round entirely, because not only have you rubbed GMs the wrong way, you don't got the benefit of the doubt because you didn't do the stuff right. And now, this leans into how people feel about your work ethic and everything else like that, which I think is unfair. He has a great work ethic, but he hasn't put it on display. Whereas with Jalen Milroe, he's done nothing but do all the shit, right? He threw at the combine, even though he knew that he wasn't going to look great. He did the Senior Bowl, even though he knew he wasn't going to look great at that point in time. And then he did the stuff. He demonstrated it. And I don't think they're going to look kindly on how he's handled the pre-draft process.
Yeah, and it's probably not his fault. It's how he's being managed. I think he's gotten bad advice on this because I think they just overvalued him, to your point. I think they thought he was a top 3 pick, and that was the way it was going to go. And it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. And now it's too late, right? Now it's too far down thing. And he's going to rub people the wrong way a little bit, as he obviously did in Pittsburgh with his, to your point, he's more boisterous than, I guess, and confident. And, some teams take that as disrespectful.
It's never a good thing to have people question if you want to play somewhere.
Right.
If I were the Sanders family and I got a whiff of people making those assumptions that, Deion ain't going to let him play here, I would have been out front being like, shut that shit down. Yeah. That's never good. Because even if a team is in one of those cities that you want to play in, that's something they consider is this guy's kind of fickle, right?
Yes.
This is you're going to have to deal with another agent. You really want to deal with that? Right. And I don't even think that's the reality. I think the kid would be fine playing wherever he goes. It's just, if that factors into decision-making, that is a perception problem. That it's an unforced error. You never want that to be Joe Burrow had this shit coming out with him, and immediately was like, I would love to play in Cincinnati. I love Ohio football, all of this stuff, because they were trying to paint it as he doesn't want to play there. He wants to go to a big city. He wants New York to take him, or whatever the hell people try to do. Yeah, you got to get ahead of that stuff. And I think it's just been a series of mismanagement and overestimation, not of Shador himself, but I think an overestimation of the thirst to take a quarterback for some of these teams in the top 10.
So let me ask you this. You like Shador. I like Shador. I just don't like him at 2. If he was there at 33, do you think it's still Milroe? If it's Milroe and Sanders are there at 33 for the Browns, do you think it's still Milroe for the Browns?
I think that would be the toughest decision of the draft for Andrew Berry, right? Because I think I get the feeling that Andrew likes both of them.
They like Sanders. Yeah, they've been positive on the whole time.
I get the feeling that they like both of them. I think this is the X factor between it, right? Because you'll hear people go ceiling floor with these two, right? And usually the consensus opinion is that Shador has the higher floor, Jalen Milroe has the lower floor, but the higher ceiling. I think of it differently. I think their floors are about the same. I think Jalen Milroe has a higher ceiling. But I don't think that automatically means you default to Jalen Milroe, right? Because Jalen Milroe is athletic enough to where he'll be something in the NFL. Shador, Josh Rosen was a high floor guy coming out in 2018, right? But if you aren't talented enough to play at the next level, your floor is the dirt, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter how skilled you are in college. You can be awful. I mean, Bryce Young, one of the more skilled college quarterbacks we've ever seen, looked like garbage for his first 2 years in the NFL. Was one of down there with DTR bad, right? So though I don't think floor we overvalue how much somebody's game looks similar to the NFL in college, how much that means it's a floor. I don't think that matters. You can have a low floor and be a pocket passer in the NFL. It's most definitely true, right? And usually what gives you a floor is your physical gifts. Jalen Milroe has more physical gifts than Shador Sanders. I think his floor is higher than Shador's. The question is, how likely do you think that player is to hit their ceiling?
Exactly.
Jalen Milroe's ceiling is Colin Kaepernick to me. But Is he as likely to hit that ceiling as Shador, who I think is around the Tua range, like he could hit? No, I think Shador is much more likely to hit that ceiling. I also think that there's a chance that Shador might not be good his first year or two in the NFL, and it's going to take a little while. Are you patient? Because I think he's going to have to play differently in the NFL than he did in college, because he's not athletic enough to roll out and be as loose in the pocket as he is. That's going to take a couple of years, right? So I view them both as projects. And if that's the case, right, I think that if I had to play one of these guys earlier, and this is going to be the ultimate against the grain opinion, I understand it. But if I had to play one of these guys earlier, I tend to lean towards playing Jalen Milroe earlier.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I know I can limit him to like 15 to 18 pass attempts and just let him run the ball.
Use his legs. Yeah.
And I can put together a manageable game plan. If Shador is not ready to play at an NFL level, you have a quarterback who's going to take a ton of sacks, get behind the line of scrimmage, and potentially throw a lot of interceptions. Yeah. That shit's not winnable with, right? With Jalen, I feel like you could put together a winnable game plan with him if you just manage him well enough. And I think he's a good enough game manager to be able to make that happen. So
it's interesting.
All those things considered, I think they go Jalen.
Yeah.
Right. For all of those reasons.
Would that be unpopular around here, I think?
It'd be unpopular until he breaks off a 70-yard run in the preseason.
Oh, I agree.
We're gonna be Cleveland fans about it, right? Like it's gonna be what it is. Or until like he walks into the building in Berea and then Tony Grossi goes, "Wow, he's really big," and then all of a sudden he likes him, right? Like, it's not gonna take long for people to like Jalen Milroe, right? And they're
very likable
person. Not underestimate the Sanders family's ability to be petty and turn the entire city of Cleveland off the ideal of ever getting that guy in the first place, right? So it will be unpopular in the immediate short term. So some people are gonna be mad on Twitter, right? But is it gonna be something that like weighs over you? You might end up making the right decision there, right? It might be something where it looks better in the short term because Jalen's able to play, but maybe he doesn't progress and then Shador looks better 2-3 years down the line. I tend to think Jalen Milroe feels like a Brown, right? Like he feels like a dude that Andrew Berry brings into this building. He feels like he's one of these guys that the Browns want to have be in leadership. And that makes me feel like that's who they pick because it's close between those two. I think between the Browns and Andrew Berry. And I think that's what they end up leaning towards is, hey, we're betting on a person at this point. Which person would I rather bet on? And I think that Jalen Milroe strikes me more as the kind of person they would want to bet on versus Shador. And I don't think drafting Travis at 2 really impacts it either way because I think they just think Travis is a phenomenal player. So I think that is the tiebreaker. And I don't know what kind of vibe Shador has given off, but Jalen feels like Nick Chubb, right? Feels like one of these personalities that just slots in there, right? Yes sir, no sir. That's kind of the big, what they call it, big bite, no bark.
Yeah.
And it's Jalen Milroe to a T. Yeah. So that's why I think they would ultimately end up going in that direction.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that, what you said. It's betting on the person at that point. It would be tough to pass on. It would be hard to pass on Shador at that point, but I do agree with you that if you're betting on a ceiling and the person and what Milroe can be, I think there's a better chance that he is the elite guy down the road. And plus, you're getting a tremendous person, very intellectual and very much, to your point, in the line of like the Nick Chubb type of guy that fits there. So that's
and Andrew might have given the game away because he was like, hey, this guy has game breaker and elite traits, right? Like, and if like at the end of the day, it's fine when your quarterback's good, right? Like if you have Tua, that's cool. That's better than nothing. but you want a quarterback that you feel like can break a game, right? Break a game plan. Like, I don't know if he's Lamar level break a game plan. Like, that's one of the most insane guys we've seen in the last 10 years. I don't feel comfortable comparing any player to Lamar Jackson.
No.
But, like, Colin Kaepernick broke a lot of game plans for those 2-3 years he was in San Francisco, to the points where it elevated that San Francisco team from a really good team to, man, they almost won the Super Bowl. Right.
Yes.
And I think that's the kind of player at his peak Jalen Milroe could be.
I think that's a good comp too, for sure. All right, good stuff, Q. Any other thoughts you want to give us tonight on things I think I know? But this will be the last time we are on the air before the big draft weekend. Any other parting words here?
Take the mock drafts with a grain of salt. I see a lot of people reacting to mock drafts like their drafts. Take the mock drafts with a grain of salt. Take what you think about where players are selected based on mock drafts and publicly available big boards with a grain of salt, and just stay open to what happens in the draft itself. There's no reason to hate a player before he's ever played for the team. Give it a chance, unless like they go back and draft Siaki Ika in like the 3rd round again. Like, there's no prospect where I'm like, good God, avoid him. Well, there's a couple at quarterback, but
Tyler Shuck. If they made a move to come up for Shuck, my head might explode. But that's about it.
Shuck in the 1st round for sure, or like Quinn Ewers at any point. Maybe those are my 2 crash out.
Same. I've had some crash out moments in the draft, and
there's one thing to put me through Kenny Pickett, but don't you dare do Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, don't do that.
Kenny Pickett. That's crazy.
All right, good stuff as always, Q. Fantastic. Good breakdown. I like that scenario there at 33. That's an interesting one. We'll see. This first round could be wild. There's a lot of pivot points, as we pointed out, and there's some sleeper teams for quarterbacks as well. So it'll be an interesting day. Keep it locked at the OBR streaming network. This has been another edition of Things I Think I Know for Quincy Carrier. My name is Brad Ward. Have a wonderful week.